children learning the lessons they need to excel from kindergarten all the way through college.
We know that there are cultural and racial and ethnic barriers sometimes to learning.
Zimbabweans take to the streets to celebrate presidential election results. Will A-Rod run the bases again this year as a Yankee? He is just one heavy hitter caught in the snare of a major league doping scandal.
I think we all agree that we want to get rid of PEDs.
And we'll introduce you to some young singers who can stack up against the talent you've seen on The Voice and Glee.
You are watching Soul of the South News.
Good evening, I'm Roy Hobbs, and welcome to the premiere edition of Soul of the South News, a newscast with perspective. Over the days and weeks to come, we'll bring you stories and information for and about our community. And we hope you'll join us for a journey that we believe will enlighten, inform, educate, and allow us to help you break through the cacophony of voices and noise that purport to be news, but instead serve little purpose other than to confuse and mask the truth. Here at Soul of the South News, we believe truth and perspective are important. And with that, welcome. In our cover story tonight, the education gap in America between African American, white, and Latino students in public schools. There is no question there is an achievement disparity between the groups. That's according to the National Center for Education Statistics. Overall, African American students are behind white students by double digits. The latest figures from 2009-2010 show graduation rates for white students at 83% nationally, but just 66.1% for African Americans. For the same time period, the dropout rate for whites is 5.1% and 8% for African Americans. Some leaders are calling these numbers a crisis in education for African American students.
It's in crisis mode. Well, I'm not even sure I want to say crisis mode. It's abysmal. We are looking at an education system in which African American children are not doing well.
Scholar activist Dr. Joseph Jones heads the social justice initiative at historically black Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. He has done a great deal of research on the philosophy of black education and the politics of education.
Education is the social justice issue of the 21st century. And if the trend continues, we're not going to have any educated populace in the African American community.
They don't provide you with the skills that are needed to excel in college. And so, you know, I'm not the type of person to just do okay. I remember going to Michigan State and I was struggling. I struggled a bit.
As African Americans, especially African American males, the system doesn't work for them. So they think that it's pointless to them to get an education because they're not going to get anywhere.
If that's what's causing the crisis in education for black students, what, if anything, is being done to address it? Arkansas State Education Commissioner Tom Kimbrell says his department is well aware of the issues facing black students.
When students are not in school, when they're either choosing not to come to school or by policy they're not allowed to come to school, you don't have that improvement in graduation rate. You don't have that improvement in student achievement. Students who are not in school are not going to learn.
Kimbrell says they've learned one key to reaching students, and especially black males, is to use technology the students are familiar with.
Particularly African American males didn't like the approach of instruction or didn't follow through with written assignments. Setting down, writing an essay or completing a report. But if the teacher asked them to do it using today's technology, texting that to me, emailing that to me, there was a 90% completion rate.
But according to Dello Strong, a 19-year-old college sophomore from West Memphis, Arkansas, there is a key component that needs to be changed.
I think they should bring in better teachers. Because I don't feel like schools have a lot of good teachers. Most of the teachers don't care, they're just there to get a paycheck. They just sit there and whatever. I mean, because I've saw teachers like I could come in and like pull your book out, read, and when it's time to go, you just go. And they just give you a grade just to get you out of their face. It's really sad.
The pressure has to come that we want engaged, excited, energetic teachers in our classroom.
Visiting history professor Jonathan Hutchins agrees.
It's our responsibility as members of that community to invest in that education. All right, we have to do more. We have to be more active. We need to go to the schools. We need to participate. We need to hold the schools accountable.
One thing everyone we spoke with agrees on, that these are symptoms of a much larger problem for black students.
As we know, any education scholar worth their salt will tell you that every child is different. They're different. They learn differently. And if every child learns differently, and if we know that there are cultural and racial and ethnic barriers, then we have to understand that there are different templates to learning. And if you employ those templates and you use those, then I think we might begin to see some correction or improvement of graduation rates.
There is a bright spot to report. Graduation rates for African American students have been going up by 1% or more a year over the past 5 years. However, some experts say those rates are being driven by African American female students who are graduating at a higher rate than African American males. Well, move over, Glee, when Soul of the South News continues taking undiscovered talent to the next level.
I'm Vicki Newton. Coming up, we'll take you to a performing arts academy in Memphis that's named for a legendary record label.
You are the lifeline.
And new information about childhood obesity and sugary drinks.
You are watching Soul of the South News.
One of the most popular shows on TV these days is Glee. It's about a group of talented singing and dancing high school students. Now, maybe you remember its twin, Fame, from a couple of decades ago. No need for make-believe, however, if you live in Memphis. Soul of the South reporter Vicki Newton tells us why.
Roy, Memphis is home to Stax Academy, named for the legendary record label. Stax Records gave us such greats as Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, and the Staple Singers. And now, Stax has stacked the odds, if you will, for a new generation of R&B singers.
Tell you now I'm 99 pounds, natural born, goodness y'all, 99 pounds.
Listen closely. You may very well hear these voices again.
Someone's on the phone, 3 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
Voices of young men and women who are steeped in greatness, the rich rhythm and blues tradition of Stax Records, made famous by the likes of Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, and the Staple Singers. Today, they're Stax Academy, an incubator for this generation's vocal stars, located on the south side of Memphis.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to thee I freely give.
Stax Academy offers after-school and summer programs. Students audition for a coveted spot, and from there, their lives are really quite similar to the experience of the talented students you see on TV in shows like Glee and Fame. Fame made its name in the 80s, long before these students were even born, but they're fans of the show, identifying with the storyline of teenage angst and love of the arts.
It's all types of music here and all types of resources here. You just gotta be able to dig into those resources.
Kyler Gilkey grew up around musicians. His dad performs with the Barkays, the original group having died in a plane crash with Otis Redding. And his mom says Kyler loved music long before he ever sang a note.
He's gotten a chance to be exposed to a lot of different artists, different musicians that have come over to give their time. So it is an excellent program.
Stax Records gave Memphis a big name in the music industry. Its stars sold millions of records with hits that are still familiar. Stax had come a long way from its modest beginnings.
Everything here in the beginning was a total accident. The man who started Stax Records was named Jim Stewart. He was a white fiddle player by night and a banker by day who came to this spot to record country music. And he met Rufus and Carla Thomas and met some people from the neighborhood, and one thing led to another.
For years, the hits kept coming, but after a while, the record company hit hard times and lost its luster. But a new century brought new ideas to the corner where Stax once reigned.
I think that it was just, it was the right time to do it. And the people who were behind it, I think, were the reason that it really made a difference, because they had this really broad vision to not just build a museum and have people pay $12 to come through and see a lot of history, but to have something for young people in this neighborhood, because there was nothing, absolutely.
Supporters followed the success of the museum with Stax Academy, and now right next door to the museum, they've built a school where the Stax philosophy of collaboration among musicians is being taught to a new generation. It's called Soulsville High School.
Jim Stewart, the fiddle player who started Stax, actually paid us a visit recently. We had some students perform for him, and it was on the 10th anniversary of the museum's grand opening, and he had the kids surround him and cut a ribbon, recut a ribbon as a ceremonial thing, and he was blown away.
This love is waiting for you.
Now the music is back in Memphis. Same place, different generation, but it's still good. In Memphis, I'm Vicki Newton, Soul of the South News.
Students from Stax Academy perform all over the world. A group traveled to Germany earlier this year to sing the music of Stax. Major League Baseball comes out swinging with heavy sanctions when Soul of the South News continues.
Plus, the potential health risks of life imitating life.
You are watching Soul of the South News.
Topping your news digest tonight, Alex Rodriguez. Major League Baseball came down hard on Yankee slugger Alex Rodriguez for using performance-enhancing drugs. The Players Union made a last-ditch appeal on A-Rod's behalf, but was told the time for negotiations was over. The star New York Yankee third baseman was suspended for 211 games. A-Rod could have been banned from the game for life.
I think we all agree that we want to get rid of PEDs. That's a must. I think all the players, we feel that way.
In all, 12 players, 3 of them all-stars, were hit with 50-game suspensions. All were punished for Major League Baseball's joint drug agreement. A major concession from Florida lawmakers, the Stand Your Ground law will be getting a second look. The Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives made the announcement after weeks of protest against the self-defense law. Stand Your Ground came under fire after George Zimmerman was acquitted in Trayvon Martin's killing. The review of the law will take place this fall, but no specific date has been set. New York police shoot and kill a 14-year-old boy. Police say the teen, armed with a 9mm handgun, was chasing and shooting at another person. The officers say they identified themselves and asked the teen to drop his gun. When he didn't, one officer fired, hitting the teen in the face. He died at the scene. The United States Department of Transportation is offering big bucks to keep pedestrians safe. Today, Transportation Secretary Anthony Foxx announced the initiative called Everyone is a Pedestrian. Foxx says the campaign is making $2 million in pedestrian safety grants available to cities with the highest rate of pedestrian deaths. Nearly 4,500 pedestrians were killed in traffic crashes in 2011, an 8% increase since 2009. States have until August 30th to apply for that money. Supporters of incumbent President Robert Mugabe, who won re-election with 61% of the vote, celebrated in the streets. South Africa's president congratulated Mugabe and is urging opposition groups to accept the results. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is joining other world leaders, calling the Zimbabwe election deeply flawed. The Australian government has gone so far as to call for a revote because of what it says was widespread voter fraud. President Clinton and his daughter Chelsea are using a live Facebook chat, hoping to reach millions of people across the world. The feed is coming from South Africa, the final leg of a 10-day trip of 5 African nations involved in the Clinton Foundation's projects. The interactive Facebook feed on Wednesday will highlight African changemakers taking positive action for progress. The event, called Embrace Tomorrow, will take questions not just from attendees, but also from those watching on Facebook. Well, look out, UPS and FedEx. Here comes the Postal Service. It wants a piece of the lucrative booze delivery business. The struggling service is looking for ways to expand its revenues after losing $16 billion last year alone. But not so fast. There's a problem with the post office delivering beer, wine, or liquor. Congress would have to overturn a 100-year-old law that prevents the agency from shipping alcohol. The Postal Service has tried before to get a provision for alcohol deliveries back in 2011, but that effort failed. Well, nobody won the Powerball over the weekend, so now the jackpot has ballooned to a whopping $400 million. That's the third highest amount ever. Whoever wins can cash out at $230 million or get the full amount paid in installments. The next drawing is Wednesday. And still ahead on Soul of the South News.
Social media responds, prompted by an uproar over tweeted threats.
You are watching Soul of the South News.
In health news tonight, the Centers for Disease Control reports the prepackaged salad mix it says caused the cyclospora outbreak or stomach bug in at least 2 states is out of their food supply. More than 370 people in 16 states have gotten sick from the bug since June of this year. The CDC reports Iowa and Nebraska, where the first reports of the bug came from, are now clear. However, the CDC says the FDA is still looking into other states. Cyclospora is usually found on produce that may have come in contact with fecal matter. Obesity in preschoolers is now being linked to sugary drinks. A new study says 5-year-olds who drink sweet drinks daily are more likely to be obese than children who don't. This is the first time a link between obesity and sugary drinks like sodas, juices, and sports drinks has been found for young children. Sugary drinks and extra weight has well been documented among teens and adults. Now, you may now be able to blame your parents for a bad habit, smoking. A new study says children of smokers are more likely to become smokers. The study also says if an older sibling smokes, younger siblings are 6 times more likely to smoke than non-smoking siblings. Researchers say teens had a greater risk of smoking even when their parents are characterized as light smokers or quit smoking later in life. Abusive language will no longer be tolerated on Twitter. The social media site is introducing a one-click button to report abuse and is updating its rules to clarify it will not tolerate abusive behavior. Twitter is cracking down following harassing and threatening messages directed at some high-profile female athletes and journalists. The one-click button makes it easier to fill out an abuse form, and the new policy applies worldwide. The life and career of Whitney Houston is now highlighted in a new comic book by Blue Water Productions. Tribute, Whitney Houston provides a colorful biography of Houston's life from a young girl in Newark, New Jersey to a global star. The glossy ends with the death of the superstar and key moments from her funeral, including quotes from actor Kevin Costner. The publication will be released on Wednesday to mark the singer's 50th birthday.
We're on the road in New Orleans, a city that has had its share of joy, more than its share of misery, but a city that has a soul and a spirit that is indestructible.
Join us as we sample Southern tradition and cuisine in the kitchen of one of Louisiana's largest favorite sons.
Mom got me involved in the kitchen about 7 years old, and she taught me how to clean, make a little sewing repairs, iron, shop at the grocery store, do laundry. You learn that growing up.
The excitement and energy for learning is so high in one Tennessee school, former students and teachers can't wait to share their enthusiasm with the next generation.
I need to run back home and tell these students at East, dude, it's a whole nother world out there.
Well, that's all for this edition. At Soul of the South News, we are committed to telling your stories. We invite you to join us every evening at 7 for Soul of the South News. I'm Roy Hobbs. Good night, everyone.